Sorry about that, we were running a little bit behind. Also, our founder, Tegan Hoffman, and her significant other, Marshall Edwards, will be coming in shortly. But for the time being, I will start the presentation. My name is Spencer Hunley, and of course, with the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network in Kansas City. And today we're going to talk about a few things. I'm going to talk about self-advocacy, going to talk about self-determination, how to be a better ally for people with autism, and also we'll have a short question and answer session afterwards, so if you have any questions, please, we more than welcome them at the end of our presentation. So anyway, if I can just have the rest of our group introduce themselves, and then we'll go from there.
First, I'm Rena Parker. Pamela Bada. Skylar Whitaker.
Great, all right. So first off, I wanted to describe what ASAN actually is. How many of you are aware of the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network before today? Okay, quite a few hands, that's good. The Autistic Self-Advocacy Network was started by Ari Naiman, and it was by and for persons with autism to advocate for the things that we need, push for and lobby for certain legislation that we need as well as making sure that our voices are heard when it comes to decisions made about policy in relation to autism and autistic individuals. This organization has been around since, I think it's been about 10 years. So while it seems relatively new on the scene, in some instances it has been very active as far as legislation is concerned, and also activism as well. So, anyway. All right, so with that, I'm actually going to talk about self-advocacy first. And how many of you are familiar with the term of self-advocacy? I'm sure that's much more, yeah, all right, much more, quite a few more hands. Self-advocacy, of course, is being able to advocate for yourself, ask and require the accommodations and other things that you need to accomplish your goals, whether it be work, school, or even your own personal life. So, and before we go any further, I'd like to introduce Tegan Hoffman and Marshall Edwards.
Hello, my name is Marshall Edwards. I am also Vice President of the Kansas City chapter of ASAN. Tegan is our president and founder, and within the last year we've really grown quite a bit, and I feel we are going to make quite a difference as the years go on. So we have a number of topics to cover today. I don't know if Spencer introduced them to you, but I'm covering neurodiversity, and neurodiversity is a concept that recognizes two categories of people, neuroatypical and neurotypical. Neurotypical individuals experience the world in a way that society is familiar with and society accepts as the norm. And the neuroatypical umbrella embraces a lot of groups such as autism spectrum disorder, depression, bipolar disorder, ADHD, and other conditions. And these groups of people tend to experience the world in ways that differ from neurotypical experience. And a big part of neurodiversity theory is that these neuroatypical experiences are equally valid and deserve to be recognized and represented in society to a greater extent, so that these people are not marginalized and pushed to the side in their interactions with society. And I myself have a number of experiences with being neuroatypical, and a lot of instances where if I had known about this theory, or if people in my life had known about neurodiversity when I was growing up, I think that things could have gone quite differently. For example, when I was in preschool, I was hyperlexic. It's a trait that basically I picked up written language very, very quickly. And so because of that, my parents started to expect some really, interesting things from me. Mostly, though, I read books and had a biting problem, so that was not, I was not the prodigy they thought I was going to be early on. But, I got the biting thing under control, and, grade school was I don't know. Anyway, throughout grade school I had some issues with being isolated, not connecting well with people, and in high school I started having fainting spells, and I got my first diagnosis that had to do with being neuroatypical. That was vasovagal nerve disorder, where the vasovagal nerve in the brain, when there are certain stimuli, it gets overloaded, and in an attempt to defend me, it shuts down, which is not very helpful. So I learned how to cope with that. I learned that I had different needs from other people when it came to certain things, and I needed to accommodate for myself, and that was okay. I did get a lot of strange looks sometimes. I'd have to put my head down, I'd have to tap my foot to keep blood going to the brain. I would sometimes have to remove myself from class, and that was just one more thing that I knew that I had to deal with. But I didn't really have a framework of talking about it with people. They thought I was maybe just falling asleep in class, or trying to get out of class, or whatever. So that would have been helpful to have had this theory around. And when I got into college, I continued to have problems with that, but I also was diagnosed with depressive mood and anxiety. And anxiety is definitely a neuroatypical problem. It affects how you, if it's a social anxiety, it affects how you deal with social stimuli. Certain things could trigger the anxiety that normal, neurotypical people, it wouldn't never occur to them. And so I know that this is a big thing when dealing with, when working with groups of autistic people, is, thinking, is there going to be a lot of ambient noise? Is the music in this venue going to make it so that I can't understand what's being said? A lot of autistic people have trouble picking up, understanding more than one if more than one person is speaking at a time, it's hard to parse that. And so these are all issues that we're growing to understand and accept for ourselves, and then hope that we can show it to others, and it'll lead to more acceptance within society. And when I met Tegan is my wife, when we met, we bonded a lot over not understanding why people did the things that they did. Just saying, why do people say this when they mean this? Why do they expect this when not everyone likes to, meet up once a week for drinks? Why is it okay to force people to do this or that? And as she sort of went on her journey of self-diagnosis with autism, I realized that a lot of the issues, more and more of the issues that she was seeing in herself that were general autistic issues, I also had a problem with and always had. So I have, over the past couple of years, accepted that I am neuroatypical and I have self-diagnosed myself with autism. So that is my experience with neurodiversity as a theory, learning about that in the last couple of years. And I will turn the floor over to Skylar, who also will be talking about neurodiversity.
Okay. Hi, I'm Skylar Whitaker, and as Marshall said, I'm going to continue our discussion of neurodiversity, particularly the idea that neurological differences are simply natural variations within the human population and should be acknowledged and respected as such. Neurodiversity is an important concept to me because I am what they call twice exceptional. I am intellectually gifted and cognitively disabled. Ha, we exist. And I didn't get diagnosed with anything for the longest time because I had really good test scores and mostly good grades, so people thought I couldn't possibly have any kind of disability, especially one to do with intellectual cognitive processes. So, when I was 17 years old, I was a national merit finalist, and I was at the top of the honor roll. At 20 years old, I was a college dropout. And at 22, I was homeless, living in a tent at a campground. Becoming involved with the autistic community and organizations like ASAN has helped me better understand the way my own brain functions and figure out what I need to do to be successful in life. So now, I'm 25 years old, and I am back in school getting my degree in education. Because I'm very aware of how diverse people's cognitive abilities are, and that they don't exist on a linear spectrum. Because being talented in some areas doesn't mean you can't be severely struggling in other areas, and vice versa. So as a teacher, my goal will be to meet the learning needs of all students, not just the ones who are neurologically typical. Neurodiversity acknowledges the multitude of ways in which individual human brains can function, because everyone's skill profile is different. There are things my brain can do very well, and there are things it definitely cannot. And none of it makes me any better or worse than the next person. Our worth as human beings should not depend on our abilities. Every person, regardless of the type or even the severity of their disability, has a right to live and to pursue happiness in their own way. And now I'm going to turn things over to Rena, who will talk about self-determination.
I'm Rena, and I'll be talking about self-determination. Self-determination is our power and right to direct our lives in the way that we would like them to go. It's our agency over what our life looks like, and without it, we often can have trouble getting satisfaction from our lives. In my life, as an example, when I first graduated high school, I knew I didn't want to live with my parents anymore. I mean, I'd known this for a long time, but now I could do something about it. And so I did. I moved out. In fact, I moved to a different city. In fact, I moved across the country. It was probably a terrible idea. It didn't go great, but it got the job done. From then on, I didn't live with my parents anymore, and I was happy with that. Certainly went through some bad times after that. Slept on friends' couches, didn't have a job for a while, but in time I figured it out and, put my life back together. Kept a stable job, kept a stable place to live, and now I'm going to school, and things are going pretty good as far as I'm concerned. But most people aren't really as reckless as I am. And especially for neurodiverse individuals, it can be pretty difficult for one reason or another to shape the path of their own lives. SANs can be for a wide variety of reasons. Many people just are constantly struggling, staying afloat in life, and so they don't have the time or energy to devote to push their lives in the direction they would like to see it go. And still others have to work within the box they're given, whether that's people who care about them or the structure of society that would like to see them in one place or another that may or may not be at odds with or that person would like their life to go. And this is why organizations like ASAN are very important. They provide a support, an advocacy group to help people push their lives in the way they want it to go in whatever kind of help they need, whether it's finding a voice against those who think their life should go one way or another, or if it's just figuring out what they need to do to better, operate within their lives so they have the wiggle room to make choices about their life. And that can be socially or financially or many things. But the important part is that we exist to help people be able to have the life they want. And it's very important since we all have the right to have the life we want. And now I'm going to turn things over to Pamela, who's going to talk about some things with language.
Hi there, my name is Pamela, and I was diagnosed with autism at the University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics in 1985. And I'm here to talk about the language that we use in regards to autism, and my word choice matters in a very big way. And I'll start off with the different ways that we refer to people on the autism spectrum. First, we have what is known as person-first language. Pretty self-explanatory. It's where it's the act of putting the person before the condition. So in my case, you would say that I am a person with autism. And this terminology is most commonly used with the people who work in the autism field in one way or another. A lot of people that do not have autism prefer to use this type of terminology. And while person-first language is often touted as being the correct terminology by different disability organizations and was meant to be complimentary and respectful and dignifying, in a lot of ways it actually minimizes and turns disability into something negative, because it's seeking to separate the person from the autism, and in doing so, it implies that there should be a sense of shame of being associated with autism, and this can cause a lot of emotional problems with those that are autistic. And so a lot of people with autism like to consider themselves as autistic, and that is what we call identity-first language, where you recognize that autism is a part of the person, and it's pervasive. It colors every way we think, see, feel things. It's not really something that we have, but something that we are. So that's a little bit about the language of how we refer to ourselves and how we can be referred to. And you'll notice I mentioned I was diagnosed in 1985. And this was back when autism was diagnosed in about 1 out of every 10,000 people. And now it's closer to about 160. And so I was diagnosed in a time where autism was always talked about as a very horrible thing. It's a tragedy, it's a burden, it's, love the person, hate the autism. And it's very damaging to an autistic person to hear these kind of things. And one of the reasons that ASAN exists is to combat that type of speech. And there are a lot of gifts that autistic people have that, if they are just nurtured and encouraged, it can really bring out a lot of wonderful things in a person who society may have already condemned right off the bat. So word choice is very important. And I, as well as many others, refer to ourselves as autistic. We can embrace that. There are strengths in what we have and what we are. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Spencer.
All right, I'm just going to finish up a little bit about self-advocacy, going into a little bit about my own story. And let me just skip through here. All right. My journey actually began when I was diagnosed at the age of 17. Now, I mean, having autism doesn't mean it was just right at that time. I just suddenly gained autism. I had it my entire life, and it wasn't diagnosed until I was 17. And at the time, the doctor who diagnosed me said I was going to be able to grow up, get a job, get married, you know, have a house, have kids if I wanted to, do whatever I wanted to do with my life, which was a much more positive viewpoint than the majority had held at that time. So, but even then, I still kind of struggled with it because I didn't exactly know much about autism, much beyond what was discussed in the media. I mean, we've all seen movies about this, but no one goes into the varying spectrum that is autism. We usually see either very low functioning or someone who is very high functioning, but nothing in between. So even at the age of 17, I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to talk about it to people. I wasn't sure if I should feel good about it or not, even though even my parents actually had a more positive aspect of, you know, we can look at this, we can research this, we can work with this. I actually went to the Missouri Youth Leadership Forum for Students with Disabilities that following year, and I learned a lot about self-advocacy. I had a lot of apprehension, some stereotypes and prejudices, because the forum was for people with disabilities, not just autism. And at the time, I thought I was going to be being actually around a lot of people with varying mental disabilities, and I wouldn't be able to relate with anybody. The R word actually popped up into my head. That's how much I was, you know, believing the stereotypes and prejudices surrounding disability at the time. So I didn't think I'd find anybody that I would have common viewpoints with, and that was not the case at all. Basically, I had to learn more about self-advocacy and my own disability, and I had to unlearn all the stuff that was put into my head by society at the time, which was, you know, that having a disability was really bad. It meant that you didn't fit in, you couldn't get a job, you couldn't be able to, you know, live independently. All the things that were taught inherently, even though we say we don't, it is taught inherently throughout society. So through that combination of learning and unlearning, I gained an understanding of what self-advocacy is. It's not just in one's personal life, it's also in the workplace, it's in school, and throughout one's lifetime. After the forum, I gained a new perspective and a new drive to go into the field of assistive technology and using open source systems to lower the cost, but I could talk all day about that. Anyway, I want to show a couple of pictures. This was me at the forum. The one on the right was whenever I was 18, and the one on the left was when I was a little older. I actually came back to the forum and try to come back every year as a youth mentor and facilitator. I feel like the forum has given me so much that I want to give back, because without it, I don't think I would be where I am today. And the same thing with ASAN. I don't think I would be the advocate I am without ASAN being in my life. So, self-advocacy, as I said before, advocating for yourself at the workplace. It can be just simple as for accommodations. How many of you maybe work at a place where you stand multiple hours a day? Okay. Some of you may have special mats for that. That's an accommodation. If you take breaks, that can be also viewed as accommodation. I actually have a special pair of glasses that prevent eye fatigue when working on a computer, and that's accommodation. Very simple stuff, but if I don't voice up that I need these accommodations, I'm not advocating for myself in the workplace, and my work suffers. It's not because I have a problem, but I just need these accommodations to do my job more efficiently. With friends and family, it's a similar thing. Talking to your friends about being more verbose, being more direct. One of the things I've said is I will let you know if I'm upset or I'm angry or I'm not feeling good. You know, I'll be upfront about this. I'm going to be very direct, and that's actually welcomed more than just kind of keeping it in. I have more friends that have been surprised, and they actually find it easier to converse with me because I'm more direct and upfront about things rather than just kind of keeping them in. Detailing some of the struggles and victories, as some of these pictures are from when I was working at ASAN-KC. Of course, the top right one was in more fun times. I'm actually wearing a lunchbox on my head. We like to mess around a little bit, but The bottom one is from the Youth League program, and where I actually taught about self-advocacy whenever going into college and other schools, what you would need to talk to your professors about. You couldn't just, at the time, you couldn't just walk in and say, I need these things. You actually had to go to an access office or some kind of accommodation office and detail what you needed. Maybe it's more test time, maybe it's somebody to write notes for you, maybe it's maybe electronic copies of notes, something along that line. And also, right here, one of my most memorable experiences was meeting Missouri Supreme Court Judge Richard Titleman. He's the only Supreme Court justice in Missouri who has a disability. He's legally blind, and meeting him was very, very inspirational. So, anyway, I want to finally wrap it up with ASAN and self-advocacy in that regard. When I first heard that Tegan was putting together a chapter here in Kansas City, I was thrilled. One of the things I've seen ASAN do nationally is build up using small victories, small changes to transform some of the issues that seems like we can't. Of course, we've all had many issues with some other organizations who continue to demonize and say that somehow that autism is horrible, then it must be cured and that sort of thing, but we don't view it that way. We don't think that if autism went away, that we would be the same people. I do have challenges in my own life, and I have issues every day, but there are advantages that I have that I don't think would be there if I didn't have autism. It's given me a very unique perspective on life. It allows me to pursue some of my favorite interests with a great degree of involvement. And with ASAN, I think that being a self-advocate and teaching others to be self-advocates, we can transform the conversation from autism being some sort of horrible disease to being just another unique person, unique perspective in this life. So. With that, I will hand it over to our founder, Tegan, and she's going to talk to you about how we look at disability and how ASAN is more also a broad cross-disability organization as well.
This is the wrong screen, so let me figure this out. You. Okay. I'm going to talk about this in a minute. First, I'll talk a little bit about myself. Growing up, I really never imagined that I would be where I'm at now. In fact, some people look up to me, which, that's just weird. So, as you have heard, I am Tegan. I created the Kansas City chapter of ASAN. This was after many things. I spent my whole life wondering what was wrong with me. And this isn't related to autism. I actually self-diagnosed in my late 20s with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Have any of you heard of that? Of course you have. It is a connective tissue disorder. To show you, for an example, every joint in my body bends. My spine, my neck. It causes a lot of pain, spontaneous dislocations. It's a mess. But I finally figured out what was wrong. I self-diagnosed. I went to my doctor, and he said, "You do have it, but there's no point in getting a diagnosis." What? It's like, there's nothing that can be done. It can't be cured. And I said, I want to go to a geneticist. I want an official diagnosis. And again, nothing can be done about this. That's what my mother said. That's what a lot of people said to me. I finally put my foot down. I went to the geneticist. I got my diagnosis. It actually has helped me. There is no cure. There's barely any treatment. But I know not to feel bad whenever I can't walk for more than a few few blocks. I know not to feel bad whenever I have to lay in bed all day or lay on my side while I'm studying. I have created my own life full of accommodations. Just little things that I never did for myself before the diagnosis. I used to push through it. I would have cooking marathons and then wonder why I was in so much freaking pain. I figured all of that out, and then I started wondering, what else do I not know about myself? I started doing research. I did a lot of research. A cousin-in-law, Marshall's cousin, was diagnosed with dyscalculia, which is a little bit like dyslexia, but it has to do with math. I realized I have that. I'm not stupid. I did some more digging. I realized I'm autistic. It explained a lot about me. So I went, I searched, I found a doctor here in Kansas City, actually in Overland Park, who was willing to diagnose adult women, which if you know anything, that is really hard to find someone that will do that. I got my diagnosis, and again, a lot of, why do you want to do this? How dare you think you're autistic? I got it. I now am in college. This is my 5th or 6th time trying to go to college, but I've actually stuck it out. I have straight A's, even in math. This is all because of accommodations. This is all because I have decided that disability is not a bad word. Disability just means that I need a little help, and who doesn't? I mean, you're moving house, someone comes and helps you move the house. Well, maybe not the house. But everyone needs a little help here and there. Some people need more help. I can't lift anything over 10 pounds. My husband lifts everything over 10 pounds for me. It's a pretty good gig. My chapter members regularly help me whenever I need help. Whenever I need help with math, I'm messaging Skylar and he's helping me. And it's great because we all work together and realize that we have our own strengths, which other people have mentioned. I have particular strengths. Apparently I'm a good leader. Who knew? I'm going to come back to the idea of disability being a good word. Because in our society, a lot of people don't see it that way. They're afraid of being diagnosed with a disability. Or even if they have one, they won't use the D word. Like my mother, she has chronic migraines, but she's not disabled. This is the capital crawl. Have any of you heard of it? It's really important in disability rights. It was in 1990. I was in kindergarten. I didn't know about this. I knew about the Berlin Wall, but not this. Physically disabled people put aside their crutches, put aside their wheelchairs, and haul themselves up over, I think, 60 or 80 stairs to show that the Capitol building is not accessible. And they weren't talking just about the Capitol building. This is before government regulations that said that all public buildings need to be accessible. They also chained themselves to the road because buses weren't accessible. They didn't have the lifts for wheelchairs, so people couldn't get on the bus. How can you work? How can you go shopping? I don't know. So they did this, and at another point they piled themselves in doorways so that Congress members had to step over them, which was another way of showing, hey, we can't step over thresholds like you can step over us. Make things difficult. These are called direct actions. Most of these people were in adapt, and in fact they still are. Let's see. Okay. As a part of ASAN, I went to the Autistic Campus Inclusion in Washington, D.C. I got to meet one of the leaders of ADAPT, and that was amazing. He walked into the room, and the first thing he said is, "Who wants to get arrested?" And the whole room was like, no, except for the girl next to me. She was like, yay! I don't want to get arrested. But I do believe in peaceful demonstrations. For here, we're saying that although parents have very good insight, autistic adults have in most ways, better insight. In fact, autistic adults with children have the best insight. I have an 11-year-old. She's also autistic. If you have any questions, I'm right here. The other thing is autistic rights are human rights. If you've heard of the JRC, it is a school that electrocutes its kids. It is paid for by taxes. Some children have died there. They're trying to make us not autistic, which is an impossibility, and so they're torturing kids with tax money. This is part of it, and actually this person here is, I think, not autistic. She joined the protest whenever she talked to someone. It's kind of amazing. The next one is Loud Hands. It is a book published by ASAN. We have a few other publications also. If you'll notice the title, it's a direct response to another group, because we're saying that this is our voice. You can't speak for us. In it, there's poems, stories. Elizabeth, did you write for it?
I don't remember. I'm going to follow. I don't remember this one.
She writes her books like these. It's really moving. I found it in the library. Buy it. If you can afford it, buy it. Don't, pay ASAN. And we don't have a lot of money. But it is an amazing book, and it's all from our words. The next one is actually a little girl with Down syndrome. Disability is, cross-disability is important. Just as we are searching for our own rights, our safety, our education, so are people with Down syndrome. And this is just saying, even if they could find the genetic thing behind autism, does that give us jobs, families? Does it make our lives better, or does it just get rid of us? I think I know my opinion, but, form your own. Here I am showing you that there are a bunch of different groups, not just autism related, that are trying to work for people with disabilities, or disabled people, however you prefer to term it. A lot of you have probably heard of the ARC. Tash is fairly popular. AWN is Autism Women's Network. They work primarily for women on the spectrum. They have released a medical kit for having conversations with your doctor, or for, if you're a caretaker, helping the person you're caring for have conversations with their doctor. And this is for all genders that visit wellness checkups. I think that's a very important thing, because doctors are terrifying. Next one, queerability. Obviously there's going to be crossover whenever it comes to oppression, whenever it comes to minorities. JRC, ADAPT. Yo Disabled and Proud, if you're in college, they work with disabled college students. They're really awesome. And Not Dead Yet are against assisted suicide for reasons that I don't want to go into here because it's really in depth. But anyways, what I'm saying is that a lot of people say, what is ableism? Disabled people are treated wonderfully, and obviously I don't think these groups would exist if we thought we were being treated fairly. So again, disability isn't a bad word. Embrace it, just like you embrace other identities, and just realize that also by us embracing our identities, we're trying to make things better, not just for us, but for everyone. And I guess that's it. I didn't really do that very well. All right. Has everyone spoke? You don't? Okay. We are going to open the floor to questions. Do we get to use these microphones, or?
Yes.
Okay. So if you have any questions, please throw them at us. We do have a few rules. We will not talk about anything that involves body fluids. If someone does feel that something's a little too personal, they may pass on it. But otherwise, raise their hand. Oh, yeah, okay. So, go ahead.
All right, I think we'll start off. Does anyone have any questions? Anything they want to start off with?
I am the parent of a 19-year-old who is high-functioning autistic, and seeing you young people gives me great hope for him. My first question is, I'd like to get him hooked into you. Do you meet regularly? What is your, how do you function? I mean, how do you work as a group?
I guess I should answer that. We have a monthly meeting. Currently, hello. We have a, can you hear me? Okay. We have a monthly meeting at the Plaza Library. We may change location one day if we ever outgrow the room. Generally, it's the last Monday of the month if I can reserve the room for that day and if it's not a holiday. Everyone is welcome as long as you agree with our mission statement, which means, you know, you want us to have good lives and survive. Pretty basic. So parents are welcome, professionals are welcome, students who are doing research are welcome, and of course, anyone with any kind of disability is more than welcome to join us because we are a cross-disability group.
I just wanted to add that, of course, autistic adults are welcome, and we have had some people contact the group about younger autistics joining the group, and we're not set up really to specifically for children, but there are certain situations where that would be all right. So I think it's more on a situation-by-situation basis, and we want to make sure that that person is not being pushed into it by a family member, and that it's their decision to be part of the group. So that would be my only addendum to that.
So yeah, consent is probably the most important thing. Everyone has to be there because they want to be there. I want to add that we don't use functioning labels and we don't care about them, and if someone comes into our group who is unable to speak, we will do what we have to make it so that they can communicate through computer, whatever. So, just so you know, anyone is welcome. Anything anyone else wants to talk about? Cool. Yeah, just here.
And then also, for those who don't feel comfortable or are not able to attend in person, there is a chat that goes on via the computer. So that's another way to participate in the meetings.
A few of our members that are here regularly attend our meetings online because they live a little too far away. So, any other questions?
Right. You talked about language and whether person first or the other identity first language. Is it appropriate ever to ask someone what their preference is?
Absolutely. It's you know, there are a lot of autistic people too who prefer a person with autism. It's just basically a matter of respect, and you'll get a lot of places that say, no, you have to refer to someone as a person with autism, despite how they personally feel about it. And that's one of the reasons why it's kind of a hot button issue in the field of autism. Is if you go online, you'll see a lot of the pro-person first language, and then a lot of the anti-person first language, and a lot of that is just kind of boils down to people are not being referred to the way that they want to be referred to, and it just feels, you know, demonizing to them. So I think that's just a lot of the issue.
So what would be the appropriate way to ask?
Gosh, let's see. Pretty much, it's like, do you prefer to be called autistic, or it's kind of like my name is Pamela, and some people are like, do you prefer Pam or Pamela? Yeah. I'm always like, I prefer Pamela, if you can remember anyway. most people call me Pam, and I kind of brush it off. It's kind of the same way with, you know, a person with autism and autistic. It does not bother me anyway. Now, if you call me the R word, that's an entirely different story. You know, it's all about the intention behind your words, you know. Or if you call me an autistic, kind of weird, but you know, it's just, you know, just a basic respect thing. And a lot of times too, if it's something important to the person, they'll tell you, like, hey, I'm autistic. So.
I wanted to add a little bit to that. We're not the only disability community that uses identity first language. We're not the only community that capitalizes the first word. I know that the deaf community and the blind community a lot of the time capitalizes the first word and uses identity first language. It is because their experiences are pervasive. It affects everything in their lives. Autism affects everything about us. That is part of why we are doing this. It is showing respect to ourselves. So I just wanted to add that.
I like what you said about, you know, we shouldn't change, you know, we shouldn't be trying to get rid of the autism. If anything, we should just make it more acceptable amongst.
Exactly, and that's why we have Autism Acceptance Month in April, just so you know. Any other questions?
I'd like to add something on that. Like I said, I was diagnosed in 1985, back when autism was unheard of, and a lot of the speech back then was overwhelmingly negative. And you know, we're a lot better now about the way we word things, but I will say from experience that the shame and the loss of self-confidence that I had grown up with as a child was far more disabling than the autism itself. And I think that this is one of the big reasons why there is such a high number of autistic people with severe depression issues. And this is really one of the big reasons is, you know, when you're diagnosed, you're pretty much just condemned right off the bat. So you have to spend, you know, your lifetime trying to basically prove your worth to other people and prove that that you do have a place in this world, and that can be very challenging to fight back against those social norms and, you know, just try and try and get a good footing in this world. So.
To say, if you want to do a little bit of your own research, what she's describing is the social model of disability compared to the medical model of disability. We follow the social model, so it's an interesting thing, actually. Okay. Oh, right. Sorry.
Well, if nobody else has any other questions, I actually have one. I've got one right here. We actually came up with a couple of questions. Let me see here. What is the role of non-autistic neurotypical allies in the self-advocacy movement?
I would say the role primarily is inclusion and respect. I think one of our mottos is no conversations about us without us. I think this is a spectrum issue, so there's a wide range of people affected by autism. And this panel's a perfect example of there's a lot of diversity on this panel about, you know, how things play out, and there's different levels of severity. And I think it starts with that simple acceptance that a different neurological makeup is not necessarily a worse neurological makeup, and that things are different but not worse. And so, what are the things? And I think every person should live as independently and as empowered as possible. And that's what we talked about with accommodations. We have some very successful adults on this panel. And we also have a lot of people on this panel who are dealing with a lot of significant disabilities. So you can be extremely successful and independent, and the right process when you're working with people, you're going to have success. So I think it's just, I don't think anybody wants us to do anything for us instead of us, but just it's kind of that balance between over and under, and just acknowledge that we're on an equal path and we have different ways of seeing things sometimes, and to show respect for that diversity. power and include us in the solution. There's a lot of problems that need to be resolved, but I think the best advocate is to seek out another perspective.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. I would just like to add to that a big thing that neurotypical allies and non-autistic allies can do is just to, and this is part of inclusion, but it goes beyond that, is to really make sure you give a platform to all different kinds of autistic people and boost their voices, especially because there's not just one autistic narrative. We come in all kinds of different genders, different economic backgrounds, different races, ethnic cultures, and the autistic experience is different for all of these. Some of us have other disabilities along with, like Tegan, having Ehlers-Danlos, and some people have a very large list of disabilities. There's people who are, there's autistic people who are nonverbal, but perhaps they can type, and there's a lot of autistic bloggers who cannot speak, but are able to blog quite eloquently about their experience, and then others who maybe cannot blog quite so eloquently, but are able to get their experiences out there. And all of these voices are so important, and it's so important to give space for all of these different kinds of experiences to be heard, so that we can come up with society-wide solutions that help all of us and not just some of us.
If you've met an autistic person, you've met one autistic person, basically.
I just want to say that I'm going to talk about actual, what an ally can do. One thing is to do things that we can't do. For example, I hate the phone. If you've ever tried to talk to me, I'm like, can we please email? If an ally likes the phone, hey, maybe you can do all the phone calls for us. Or maybe you can prompt us, hey, you said you were going to write this letter. Crap, we have to write this letter. Some of us are really good at scheduling type of things, but, we're also all really busy. I'm a full-time student, part-time parent, full-time napper. Allies are here. We need you to help us, just as possibly you need us to help you. There's someone here that made a really awesome app, and we are helping to beta it because we think that it is awesome. We're creating technology. I'm going to school possibly to be a doctor, writer. Math teacher. I mean, we're all here to do stuff. You're all here to do stuff. Let's work together and be a community, which is what this is what ASAN is about. Is creating community. Everyone's welcome.
All right. Basically, if you'd like to talk to us afterwards, we're welcome to talk with you. Also, as you can see here, we're on Facebook, we got Twitter, we got an email, we got our own website. It's still kind of being built, but I think it looks beautiful. So, also, if you want to check out ASAN's national site, it's autisticadvocacy.org. And if you have any questions, let us know. And thank you so much. One more thing.
ASAN-KC, that's not the email.
What's that?
It's TNH@ASAN-KC.org.
Oh, it is. Oh.
Yeah. So if you wrote that down, don't. It's TNH@ASANKC.org.
Actually, that's right here.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So
Cindy, this will be available online also.
DH at ASAN.
Yeah, and you can get it off of
The
our
KC,
website.
the KC.org.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I didn't bring my cards. I'm sorry. Crap. I'm so sorry. That's it. I'm assuming.
Yep, that's it. Thank you very much.